for entertainment purposes only. And if you want true legal advice, contact your own lawyer.
Radio Law Talk. I like that show.
This is Radio Law Talk. And now, back to the show.
We're talking about a Playboy reporter by the name of Brian Karem, whose credentials were pulled by the Trump administration. And you know, look, we hate to go off on tangents, but we were off air talking about the difference in the 70s when I was growing up. I still remember going to my mom we're coming from a very religious family, and my mom would bring me into this little old place. It's an old town, and get my hair cut for the first time. And I remember sitting down in the corner of the barber shop, and there's a couple old guys sitting there waiting for their hair to be cut, and Playboys all over the place, and everyone's reading them. My mom grabs me, and this is actually true, grabs me and pulls me out of there, and oh, okay, Mom. And picture this little 8-year-old boy walking. She goes down to the next guy, and I remember their names, Barber Willie and Barber Bill. And sure enough, I'm taking you to the other barber. Took Barber Bill, sat down in the corner, Playboys all over the place. My mom took me out of that one. I was like, why don't you just cut my own hair, Mom? But that was the way it kind of was in the 70s. It was interesting. But this is a Playboy reporter that does the political parts of Playboy, does the political articles, was kicked out for supposedly being unruly. And this is what we have to note down. Let me read, before we get into what happened here, let me read what the court has said, because the court gave him back his credentials, and everyone thinks, well, wait a minute, this is a constitutional issue. It is not a constitutional issue. This is what it is. And this is an important quote. Was this from the justices, basically? I mean, the judges. You said that the decision explicitly does not reach the First Amendment issue at play. Instead, it's Karem's allegation that his due process was violated through a lack of notice about the decorum, or how he was supposed to act, that carried the day. The judge that basically did not conclude, whether or not this was a First Amendment issue. The issue was whether or not he had due process.
Right, and due process means fair notice in the beginning that if he does these type of acts, then he is going to be subject to having his press pass pulled, right? Due process also is, once he gets his press pass pulled, what process does he get to challenge that? So it's a two-step kind of a due process issue. And they never had to reach the issue of whether or not it impacted his right to free speech or any of those other issues, because the due process one came first, and it was decided. And it was decided in favor of Karem. And Karem did bad acts, there's no question. And what the White House tried to argue was that because they kicked out Acosta before, that when they sent the letter to Acosta saying, this is why you were kicked out.
This is prior to this.
This is prior to this case, and Acosta got his press pass back. The judge in the Acosta case said it was just too vague as to why he was kicked out. So you can't do this. And now the White House said, we sent it out about the Acosta, and we made that a public memo. So this guy, Karem, knew what he was doing, and it was against Acosta, and the court rejected that.
So really quickly, in the Acosta case, Jim Acosta with CNN had his pass temporarily suspended and then reinstated because he challenged it, because the allegation was that when a staffer went to go grab the microphone away from after President Trump wanted to move on, the claim was that he had brought his hand down in a chopping motion that was assaultive in some way. Regardless of whether that is true or not true, according to what Denise is saying, he was entitled to notice about what the proper conduct was, and then whether or not that actually violated that code before that happened. In this case here, it was a Trump staffer that responded to Gorka, or not Gorka, Karem. Karem said something along the lines of, quote, this is a group of people that are eager for demonic possession. And this was in a group. And Gorka, the Trump staffer, responded saying, you're a journalist, right? At which point Karem said, something along the lines of, you want to step outside and handle this? That could,
Yeah, you could deal with it here, or we'll deal with it out there, something like that.
And that could be construed as a threat or fighting. It could not be. It could be. It's up in the air, but the administration viewed it as that, and that's what they pulled it for. And I kind of agree with the court's ruling that, look, you got to spell out what a person did, and they're entitled under due process. Because if this goes through, then the press pass is taken away and the First Amendment right is encroached. And much like a previous case that we had talked about, it's not that the judge is saying that he had this right or didn't have this right and was exercising it correctly. The judge is saying, no, this is the process you have to follow.
It's a vague standard you put out there. Right.
You got to follow this standard if you want to do that.
And what's important here was this was not a press meeting of the press. This was a meeting at the White House of a bunch of individual press members and other members that are talking about what was it they were talking about? Oh my gosh, I can't remember what it was. It involved First Amendment
issues. I thought it had something to do with. I just had it on the tip of my tongue and I forgot.
Well, anyway, so there's differences between when you're in the press room and when you're just in an event. Right? So there's different standards for the press on those two different occasions. And Karem's standard was when he was at an event, whereas Acosta's standard was when he was in the press room.
And it was shortly following what's called a social media summit where they had bloggers and celebrities there, and they were having this after summit get together in the Rose Garden, and press members were there on the fringes wanting to ask questions, and that's where it all started.
And it's sort of the equivalent of locker room talk until they start asking questions, and then it becomes, again, back to their official function, why they were in the White House in the first place. I wanted to point out, too, that local reporters, when there's a president or presidential candidate visiting, they have to have their background screened and all of that stuff as well. And if a judge denies, there's no time to have a hearing. You're just not going to cover them.
Right.
So there can be, and those rulings can be arbitrary. They can be for any reason that they decide. Secret Service, White House, anybody can pull the chain on that.
Well, here's two interesting things I found about this. The first thing is the judge, though ordered, look, you have to give them due process, said, I quote, however, he's talking about the reporter here, however, quote, I'm not sure I'd go so far to say he dealt with the situation the best that he could. In other words, he wasn't too happy, or she wasn't too happy, it was a woman judge, she wasn't too happy how he handled the situation. The Playboy's
how Karem handled the Playboy reporter.
Absolutely,
Okay,
he was guilty of some misconduct for sure.
Right, now here's the other issue. Everyone says, "Oh my gosh, this is a Trump. Dang Trump! Trump doesn't want it. Trump's anti." Well, two other presidents have done this. Did you know that? Nixon did it. Nixon did it during the time when he was having these issues with the Watergate, all that issue. The Washington Post he banned. He also banned a number of other credentials from people that he didn't like, and that became an issue during Nixon's time. And during the Obama administration, shocker, Obama did not allow the Washington Times, the New York Post, or the Dallas Morning News on Air Force One during a trip, but he allowed Ebony and Glamour to come on. And so that was a big issue, but it was kind of swept under the rug. And he argued, he did allow eventually Fox to come on, who was generally what he would say was more conservative type of news casting. But it's happened before. This is not the first time.
Yeah,
he didn't pull that. Let me back up. I just want to. He didn't pull their credentials. He just didn't allow them to come on. So no, it's not, you're right. It's not
different for the application process versus pulling it.
But if everyone thinks this is the first time that a president has beefed and not allowed certain people with credentials to come in, that has happened before.
Primarily to block their critics or people who spin the tone of coverage in a way they don't like. That just has been used this was the Nixon tool, and this was the Obama tool as well. And in Trump, there was just this guy or Gorka never had liked. Now Gorka's he's out of there. He has his own radio show.
Well, Trump's done something different that everybody's kind of ignoring. He did a massive purge and got rid of some people, press people that had been there for 21, 30 years.
Which is his right, by the way. They come in at the pleasure of the president unless there's some reason for them not to.
Well, that's not true necessarily.
But
they
I'm
have to
saying
have
now
a process.
now the courts have ruled not, but I'm saying...
Well, no, the courts have ruled, no, that's not true. The courts have just ruled you have to go through a process.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all.
And
So Trump
yes.
can, but you have to go through the process, Trump. And the issue of whether or not it's constitutional has not come up. That's not an issue.
Right.
So,
And
yes, but again, it's not, Trump's not the only one. He's just doing it much harsher in a much different way, like what Denise is trying to bring up.
Yeah.
Obama was pretty smart in the way he did it. He just quietly
He
said,
did
"No."
it by different events.
Yeah.
He kind of really kept it small like that, but Trump has actually purged people.
Okay, we'll be back. We're going to talk more law.
Go to the website, radiolawtalk.com. That's radiolawtalk.com.